Good evening, everyone, and thank you very much for coming. I'm Chris Stiles, and I have the great privilege of being Dean of UNSW Business School, and tonight I warmly welcome you, alumni, friends and special guests, to what promises to be a very memorable Meet the CEO. I begin this evening by acknowledging the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians of this land. We acknowledge all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders, past, present and emerging, and their communities who've shared and practiced their teachings over thousands of years, including business practices. We recognise Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people's ongoing leadership and contributions, including to business, education and industry. This long-standing series has had some wonderful guests that we have learned a great deal from. Recently, we've met the CEO of Wesfarmers, the head of ASIO, bank CEOs, the CEO of Australia Post and the Premier of New South Wales. Tonight, we are again privileged to have as our special guest another great leader as we meet Katie Page, CEO of Harvey Norman. Katie has been on our wish list to be featured in this series for some time, and this has been 2 years in the making. And a big thank you to Kathy Harris, sitting down the front, who is the biggest arm twister in Sydney. Thank you very, very much for being so persuasive. Katie will be interviewed by our resident interrogator, Mark Scott, AO, Secretary of the New South Wales Department of Education and long-standing member of UNSW's Business Advisory Council. Mark, thank you once again for taking time out of your very busy, at the moment, day job to be with us here this evening. Just to note that we are recording tonight's forum, which will be available after the event through the UNSW Business School YouTube channel and website. And thank you to the many of you who sent in questions in advance for Katie prior to today. Some of these questions will be covered in the conversation, either through Mark's interview or afterwards. There'll also be a Q&A at the end of the interview for live questions, or you can submit your questions to us online by following us on Twitter at UNSW Business using the hashtag #MeetTheCEO. But before we begin, can I ask you to please turn your mobile phones to silent? No phone call could possibly be more interesting than what you're going to hear tonight. It's now my great pleasure to welcome UNSW's Chancellor and big supporter of Meet the CEO, Mr. David Gonski AC, to introduce our guests.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, firstly, welcome to each and every one of you. Can I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which this building stands? I had a bit of a moment, and at my age that does happen, a few minutes ago. We were guided very capably into this room. We had our guest of honour, we had our powerful interrogator, but there was no audience here. And I thought to myself, the virus. And I looked around, and there was, even with my ego, there were far too many empty seats. And I would like to start by thanking each and every one of you for coming out tonight. I know absolutely that when Katie Page is talking, we all come, and so we should. But I'm also taking it, if I may, as Chancellor, of your link with the University of New South Wales. Thank you sincerely. We had almost 1,100 people register for this event. Fortunately, they didn't turn up because they'd have to sit on your lap. But basically, it is wonderful to see every single seat, other than one over there, taken. Can I also talk about the Meet the CEO series? Chris is absolutely right. I love this series. I have been Chancellor for 15 years. It's been going for 18, and I attended most of the 3 when they wouldn't let me speak, which was prior to becoming Chancellor. The quality is very high, and tonight I think we've reached yet another pinnacle, and I want to thank Kathy Harris. I don't know what she paid or what she did to get Katie here, but we appreciate it. Our guest of honour tonight is Katie Page. Already it's been mentioned that she's the CEO at Harvey Norman. She's promised me she's going to tell us of what bargains exist in the shops, although she's mentioned that most of them will be in Singapore, so if you want to go over, you can get there before the stores close. Katie is one of the most powerful women in business today, and there's absolutely no doubt of that, and it's something I know a lot about. I'm told by the sheet in front of me that she was ranked 4th on the Australian Business Review's list of the 50 most powerful women in business in 2015. They were wrong. I know everyone in that area. She should have been higher than 4th, in my opinion. Katie's been involved with the retail giant for over 30 years. She's transformed it, and we've watched it, from a national institution into a global success. She's overseen the opening of more than 220 Harvey Norman stores in eight countries. And she will hopefully share some lessons from us, and particularly those of us who are a little bit more myopic and deal in Australia and don't look internationally as Katie does. Katie's also done an awful lot outside of business. She's a supporter and promoter of women in sport. She sits on many boards, including the Sydney Cricket and Sports Ground Trust, the Bradman Foundation, the Place Management New South Wales Board, and she was the first woman to be elected to the board of the National Rugby League. Katie will be interviewed tonight by our resident interrogator, and you've heard me many times note he is our boss as head of the New South Wales Department of Education, but we still don't take him that seriously. Despite that, he has been a wonderful, wonderful contributor to our university, and in my opinion, he's a great interviewer. He was awarded an honorary doctorate in 2016 and has been a victim of somebody else's interviewing techniques as Meet the CEO when he was the CEO of the ABC. Ladies and gentlemen, I welcome Katie and Mark to the stage, and thank you sincerely for being here.
Obviously, that's your better side.
Centre stage, Katie. That's where we need you
ABC,
tonight.
yes.
Welcome to Meet the CEO, and a packed crowd, as we can see. Now, here's the drill. I'm the warm-up act. Easy questions. Get your eye in. Then we're going to throw it to the crowd. And in the second half hour, we're going to hear questions from the floor, and also lots of really great questions were sent in advance as well. And if you're following online, hashtag Meet the CEO at UNSW Business. Katie, we're all shaped by our influences and our upbringing. Your father was a bank manager, and you'd travel around with him through regional Queensland. What did you learn about business from your dad?
So, bank managers were moved every 4 years. I was born in Mareeba. Most of you won't know where that is. It's Atherton Tableland, far north Queensland, then to St George, then to Brisbane. But at a very young age, my father had 4 daughters, no sons. So I was brought up to believe I could do anything. He was, and my mother, both fantastic people. We didn't have a lot of money, but just that whole family, community piece was really important. At a very young age, he got me to read the business section. The first newspaper I read was The Australian, when Rupert put out the first copy. So my father obviously thought these girls are going to have some understanding of what happens outside of normal life. And so that was very strong in my life from a very young age.
And you went to Brisbane State High School when the family went to Brisbane. I heard you describe that as a strongly feminist school where we were taught girls could do anything. So your father had that message to you, your school had that message to you, so you could do anything. What did you want to do?
Can I just go back one step? It was a primary school teacher that said to my parents, this girl's got a brain, get her to sit for this selective school. So I was 10 or 11, and the self-esteem that gave me was unbelievable. I got to go to the only select school in Queensland, so I was surrounded by highly intelligent boys and girls. I was like, what am I doing here, right? They're much better than I am. But, that education piece has been with me, the strength of that education piece and how important it is to help girls and boys have that education piece has been with me forever. Brisbane State High, an amazing experience. My father got moved again, came to Sydney. So year 11, I was asked to sit for North Sydney Girls, another select school. Again, fantastic. So really, Between my family, my father, and that education piece, it was the most important thing to frame what I am today.
And so what were your career ambitions after that education that your family had given you and your schools had given you?
So it was a segregated school. Can you imagine in those days? It was a male and female school, but it was segregated. So you went together in class, but you weren't allowed to talk at lunchtime. And I had the headmistress and her deputy were single women, but very strong on making sure that their girls could do anything. I left that school. I didn't want to be, and remember this is the 70s, you could become a teacher, a wife, a nurse, something. I didn't want to do any of those things. So I decided I wanted to be a surveyor because that was very male, and I thought, this is great. The Queensland government very kindly said we don't take women. I was 17, and so I said I don't like this state anymore. I found when I left school that women were paid 40% less, so I came to Sydney. I put my age up because I couldn't afford to live here, and fortunately went to work for a Danish firm with a guy, the owner, that decided I had something, and so he was the first really powerful person in business that I worked with that said, doesn't matter if you're male, female, if you've got the ability, I'm going to bring you through.
You ended up working with Gerry Harvey in the early days of Harvey Norman, and so you were there. It's developed into this big media empire. Gerry had Norman Ross previously, but Harvey Norman was starting. Tell us about your blooding in the retail business through the early days of the establishment of the firm that you now run.
So at 19, I met Gerry and Singo. This was before Harvey Norman. So I really have to tell you this story.
I think we want to hear it too.
And they want to hear it because it's very important to business students. Singo said to Gerry, you've got this company, autistic children not known in this country. There was this man, Dr. Andrew Vern Barnett, had an autistic child, couldn't get the money to get research, etc., set up a school. So Gerry gave a percentage of the profits from Norman Ross, and I was working for autistic children. Interestingly, at that school was a woman that became a very good friend of mine, and she's an even better businesswoman than I am. Her name's Naomi Milgram. And she was a teacher there. So here you've got two amazing women wanting to do great things in business, and it all goes back to autistic children. So when Gerry was having an altercation with a man called Alan Bond, some of you might remember Alan Bond. So Gerry had let his shareholding slip below 50%, Norman Ross. It was a public company, very successful public company. Alan Bond raided that company. So there was a fight for that company. Alan Bond ended up with that company. He needed the cash box. He got the cash box. Gerry realised very quickly he was a crook and a fraud. Tried to tell people that he was a crook and a fraud. No one would listen. Alan Bond and Gerry very quickly parted ways. There was no compete or anything like that, right? So Gerry started Harvey Norman, and that was October 82. He'd always wanted to do a superstore concept, which was something that was very big in America, and decided that it was going to be at Auburn. So Auburn is the geographical centre of Sydney. People used to say, why Auburn, why not eastern suburbs, etc. But to do one store, he was only ever going to have one store, you needed it in the geographical centre of Sydney. So from day one, that store was an outstanding success. I came onto he phoned me and he said, listen, I need someone to help. We're only ever going to have one store. You can do whatever you like. right? You can do the advertising, you can do the buying, whatever. I just know that I think you'd be great in this business. He said, but there is one thing, I need you to type. I said, Jerry, I don't type, right? That's not in my future, I don't type. He said, oh, come on, Kate. Try with 2 fingers, do something. I said, Jerry, I'm not going to type, right? You've got a choice. You either have me and I'll do the advertising and this and that. So that's what happened. And very quickly, we decided as a team, and at this point, Ian Norman, right, our partner, was there, but he wasn't there. He was a silent partner. So it was Jerry and I. So I joined 6 months after that store opened, and we decided we'd do a second store. And that store was a fantastic success. And then I said to him, you know, my family think this, you know, they need to buy a fridge in Queensland. They can't buy it. Let's open a store in Queensland. So that's how we started, looking at interstate as well. We obviously, by this time, were a partnership more than, you know, just working together, as happens. And we said, okay, we need capital, we need to expand this business fast, it's going well. We'll go to the markets. We decided to go public in 87, and then we got married in 88. So that's how these things happen.
Let's just talk a little bit about Jerry. You know, your business has clearly been central to your married life and your family life. Your business partner is your life partner and is such a big personality. Is it all one in your mind? Do you in a sense bifurcate? Is there the business Katie and the family Katie and the life partner, or in a sense does it all just merge into one?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question because it's very hard for people to do this. I mean, Kathy and David work together. Kathy understands perfectly what we go through. So over time, we are such different people, and we fight like you wouldn't believe.
Yes, I heard it said that your arguments are the stuff of legends, like open heart surgery.
And it's true, right? In this day and age, we're in a time period now where founding families, where husbands and wives working together is not the thing. And most people in this room are quite aware about what happened last year with our AGM, and you know, this is just not on. But in fact, all of our money is in this company, right? We are the major shareholder. We're going to work like you wouldn't believe to make sure this is successful. We're going to maybe innovate a bit more than companies with boards that haven't got skin in the game, that have never been retailers. But also we're quite comfortable to have the hard discussions. People leave rooms because they can't cope with those hard discussions that Jerry and I have together. But we see it as a healthy thing. The family part is interesting. Our kids grew up, and people don't know we've got children. And that, to me, is right. I've done a fantastic job, and Jerry's done a fantastic job. It was always that they go and do their thing, whatever that may be. But those kids from babies were in the Tarago in any number of countries. As we went around having a look, doing the business case, does this work, etc. By the time they were 18, they said, please don't ask us to see another fridge.
Is it true that you
lounge.
go looking for sites for Harvey Norman in the Tarago and you told the kids that this was a holiday?
That was our holiday.
Yeah.
Right? So school, I love school because they're at school. And then on school holidays, we'd do the stores with them, and whichever country that was.
You in a sense learnt this business, were present at the creation, saw it grow. You still have a reputation of being a very hands-on manager in this business despite its scale. How much does that mindset of the pioneer, almost startup retailer still permeate you as you're a global retailer and one of the biggest retailers in the country?
You cannot be in retail and not be hands-on, right? This idea that you sit in a boardroom or sit in an office in Sydney and are running all these countries and do not know what's going on. Someone in a government department said, "Oh, please don't tell me you're into the minutiae of your retail business." I said, "Yes, I am," right? And that's what makes us successful. We've got to be able to understand what the trends are. Where do you open? What is the future of our company? And because we're hands-on, because we think long-term, that's the other thing. How many people do you talk to that are looking at the next 2 or 3 years? We're looking at 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. We're a long-term company. If you don't think like that, your strategy's not around that, then you're just another CEO or chair that's got a tenure of 3 to 5 years and you really don't care.
You have this reputation of having a great sense of where the market is going to be with in a sense, the product that you're buying and planning for and promoting. Where do you get your instincts of where the market is going to be? What gives you insight into where our habits and our lifestyle will push us in a retail sense 5, 10 years from now?
I spend a lot of time with global manufacturers with their design teams, not just with the CEOs or the boards. I spend time with their thinkers. Where are they taking the brands? So when you think about the brands that we've got in our stores, they're the biggest brands in the world, right? Whether it's Microsoft or HP or Apple, whoever it may be. Then you think about the Koreans with Samsung, LG, Electrolux in Sweden. I'm in those head offices all the time, working with those manufacturers, and I insist that their design teams come to those meetings, that quite a number of people come to those meetings so we can see where they're going. And when you think about, and there's going to be lots of questions about online to offline, what does today's retailer look like, etc. So think about what a flagship strategy looks like, which is something that we relaunched 5 years ago in Singapore. It was obvious that through the whole digital online play, there was no money being spent in physical. All of these companies around the world, so they wouldn't look like Luddites, were spending all of their money on digital and online. The consumer, and I'm a consumer, would go into these stores and they would be bored to tears. If I hear one more person say that department stores are dinosaurs, I can take you to Selfridges, Holt Renfrew, Brown Thomas, right, the Weston Family Group, and you'll see the best retail of your life and you'll spend a fortune. But I'll take you to some other stores where they haven't spent money for 10 years, 12 years, the lights haven't been changed, the fittings haven't been changed. Why would women shop there? So that whole flagship strategy was important.
Yeah.
And getting back to what you were talking about, so by working with all of those design teams, with all of these fabulous companies, we said, with my design team, what do you want a physical store to look like? And so that flagship in Singapore was designed with all of those brands. And that's why from day one it was so successful.
Let's come back and talk about online shopping in a minute, but let's pick up your theme or your insights into the performance of retailers. Here in Australia, you've got Myer and David Jones that are challenged. You've had mid-tier retailers wiped out. Are you a believer in the sector? And if in fact you weren't the big shareholder in Harvey Norman and you were CEO of David Jones and Myer today, would you have a different strategy and could you bring those old brands to life?
It kills me to see David Jones and Myer where they are. They've had lots and lots of boards that were good people, didn't know what they were doing. Some people in this room will remember when Jerry promised to buy David Jones for me. So I think it was 2000. He said, now when that share price goes to $1, I'm buying it for you. He reneged. David Jones would still be fabulous today, right? And
so what would you be doing differently if you were running David Jones or Myer?
So without giving too much away, because retailers have their secrets, the first thing I would do is invest in their flagships. This idea, so today's mindset is you just keep reducing, square metre, reduce, right? Everyone's going to shop online, everyone's going to sit in their bedroom and have this wonderful life, shipping in lots of dresses that look bad on them, and then they have to have them taken to Westfield to be adjusted because they've just paid all this money. But in fact, the sector is not working because the people that are running it aren't delivering for the consumer. So for us, it's about, I don't care how you shop with us, whether it's in-store or online, it's got to be seamless for you. If you want to shop online, you shop online. If you want to come in and you've seen it online, and we've been online for a long time. Remember, we were first online in the 90s. We went through the dot-com boom. So we went through the 90s online, took it off because of the cost of doing it, did it again, came off and went on again. So it's what makes your business work to your customers' advantage. Forever, right? Customers have been online, looking at their phones, looking at PCs, whatever, and getting data. Do I want that? Having a comparison site, that's been around forever. But where most retailers miss the point is, most customers still come into a store. So they've got all of that information, they then come in and the salesperson says, you know what, that fridge you're looking at, it's actually not right for you. I know you've seen the white box there and it's $8.99, but in fact what you need is an internet fridge. I can see that you love smartphones, a lot of customers are actually not buying the right product. So then by having offline and online, or vice versa, you see so many online retailers now have to have a physical footprint. They cannot grow their brands. They can get to a certain point. Have a look at acquisition costs online now. This is crazy stuff. So what we say is, however you want us to engage with you, however you want to deal with us, it's not either or, it's all. And I think that's the discussion that people aren't having around the world, and that's department stores. I love a good department store, but I'm not going to shop in a bad department store.
And the extent to which a significant portion of your focus is on the online strategy as well as the physical strategy?
So and this is another interesting point, the world got itself, retailers got themselves into a bit of a situation. They started to, because the market asked them, they started to break out their online sales versus their offline sales, which is a misnomer. There's, in our category, there's no such thing as a pure online sale. Most of those sales have started offline with the salesperson. You'd be surprised, most retailers do not track that. So they call an online sale, even if it started here and they've dealt with, and someone just goes home and goes, yeah, I'll have it, right? That's a pure online sale. So if there's nothing else that I do, it's saying to people, a sale, however it comes about, is a sale, and we will never break out that part compared to that part. We never broke out our credit cards. We never broke out our catalogue sales. So it's a sale. Now, that's not to say that there aren't parts of the market that are pure online. They are, but for our business, it's not like that.
You talk about, we've seen the massive growth in Australia, but you've had significant international expansion as well. I understand how you can have just great insight to an Australian market, born here, live here. When you're going to Eastern Europe and setting up stores, what gives you insight into the market psyche and the mindset of the purchaser in a country so far away and culturally so different to here?
Can I take you back to why we went overseas first before
Sure.
I answer that? And David, you'll be interested in this. Most people will. It was 91. unemployment was 14.5%, interest rates were 17.5%. We all remember, some of us of a certain vintage here remember it well. And even though we were going well, we flatlined. We did not go down. We sat down and said, what if this is Australia for the future? What if we're in a country that, you know, Paul Keating's right, it's a problem at the time. So we said we need to repatriate other currencies. We need, if we really believe what we've got can be taken anywhere in the world, we need to start looking at overseas countries. So that's how it started. And we decided that the first overseas country would be New Zealand. You think about New Zealand, the most expensive piece of water is between Australia and New Zealand. You've got to get your logistics right. The second most expensive piece is between the North and the South Island. We had currency differences, so that was great. We could test currency. Supply chain, it's not that easy, right? You think New Zealand's close, but it's not so easy. So we chose New Zealand as the first offshore country, and we've been very successful there. A lot of Australian companies haven't been, but from pretty much day one we were successful. But our true goal was Southeast Asia. Even then we believed that Australia sat within an Asian precinct, and that was our future. So we were looking, and the Asian crisis happened. And that was in the late 90s. There were a lot of good companies that came up for sale, and it gave us an opportunity to buy two companies that had an amazing workforce in Asia, and that was based in Singapore. We wanted to be Singapore, English law. We still wanted to do the rest of Asia, but we wanted our office to be there. You think about Southeast Asia, it's 650 million people. We're sitting here in Australia with 25 million people. If you can crack that market, that emerging market, we were never going to do China, we were never going to do India, we were never going to do Japan. It was about Southeast Asia. And today, so that was 20 years ago, and anyone that's been following us, our big growth at the moment's coming from Malaysia, 32.5 million people. Prime ministers come and go, they don't care. And it's that emerging middle class which gets us to Slovenia in a minute. We decided we were about emerging middle class because they need fridges, lounges. That's our sweet spot. So in Asia, 20 years later, my crack team up there were those that came with us as part of those two companies we bought 20 years ago. And the owners, there was one particular Singaporean family that owned one of those companies, and they chose Jerry and I because they wanted a family that would look after their people. They were so devastated with what had happened. They'd been going since the 60s. They had a lot of companies that wanted them, but they wanted to make sure that their people were looked after. And that's very much how Jerry and I think about the people we've got around the world, how you look after them first. So then Slovenia's interesting. Slovenia, we'd been buying from Slovenia since the 80s. And great manufacturers, Eastern Europe, great manufacturers. They were going into the EU, and we got friendly with the president, who was very thankful that we were supporting that economy. And, you know, he said, we need, as we go into the EU, we need brands that aren't Slovenian. And we'd like you to consider doing this. We own all of our real estate there. We saw, again, an emerging market as the wall was coming down in all of these countries. We tracked that we could get to certain countries, not all. So the idea, and this is before the GFC, keep that in your head. So we've been through the Asian crisis, we're coming up to the GFC. But you think about Slovenia, Croatia, Hungary, Slovakia, Poland, that's 75 million people. So again, emerging market, that was what we were going to do. And even through the GFC, we did not lose money there. We opened Zagreb, we opened Croatia. Very quickly we made money there. So now we're back on our horse. GFC's gone. Forget what's happening at the moment. We'll make our way back up towards Poland for 75 million people.
Yeah. We're shortly going to go to the floor for questions. As well as the retail business, you're there, a founder of Magic Millions, you're on the board of the Cricket Ground Trust, you're on the board of the Rugby League, been on the board of the Rugby League. Tell me, what do you learn from those other business experiences, and how does that enrich you personally, but how do your lessons from those experiences come back and influence your job as the CEO of Harvey Norman?
So the first board I went on to outside of Harvey Norman was Rugby League. And they were going through really bad times at that point with behaviour, and they felt that they needed to start engaging women in the sport. They had a problem. And I was actually a News Limited appointee. So what I didn't realise was there were no other women on any sporting boards in the country. So overnight it was, Kate, don't worry, it won't take a lot of time, to overnight, oh my God, right? Okay, so this is what we've got. So it's like any board. You don't sit on a board unless you can find your place within that business board, whatever. So I sat there and watched for 12 months, and I'd been involved with sport since the mid-90s. So in the mid-90s, the Super League fight happened, Rugby League lost all of their sponsors, and it was our fans of Harvey Norman, actually, our warehouse people, our salespeople, our customers said, Harvey Norman's got to save this game. That was in the 90s. I had no idea. So that actually started me on my sporting journey, that's where I realised that we're dealing with 25 million people in this country that love sport, and as a brand, if I'm marketing, I've got to be able to engage. So by the time I sit on this board, I've got to find out how I sit. How do I contribute? If I can't contribute to something, I'm not there. It was obvious that the women of that game were such a powerful part of that game, but they were invisible. And this was for a lot of sporting codes. It wasn't just Rugby League. So it was by starting Women in League, and the other codes very quickly after Rugby League said, oh my God, we better get women involved here, enabled me to not only work with Rugby League, but I started looking at women in sport. And there's no prescriptive, this is what you do to bring women through in business, in sport, etc. So with sport, with Rugby League, it was the support, the sponsorship. Then I looked at, there was another sport that actually needed my support for broadcast. They couldn't get their sport on television, so how do you get sponsors if you've got no profile? So then we started working on where the money got spent. So it wasn't just that way. It was each sport came to us and we did different things, whether it was paying for those girls for change rooms, or it's pretty well known that I supported the first female AFL team. It was a mainly Muslim team in Auburn. What a great joy. But again, what that did for that community, and those girls and their mothers were going through so much pain at the time, and this was like a ray of sunshine for them. So, this has given me more and my company more than we've given back, actually, and it's about community.
Fantastic. We're going to go to the floor. So, questions for Katie Page. I think we're hearing a masterclass on retailing tonight. I've got lots of questions sent through. So, right down the front for the first question. Thanks.
I have to stand up. Hi, Katie. I'm Jen Dallitz. I'm on the Alumni Advisory Board. I'm a mad keen equestrian. So happy for your support of the sport. I grew up in South Australia watching Jill Rolton take Peppermint Grove to an Olympic gold medal, and I'm just interested to hear your perspectives. Equestrian sports is really interesting because men and women are on a level playing field, and what can we learn from sport about being on a level playing field and competing together?
I didn't think I'd get a horse question, an equestrian question, but I'm really happy that you've talked about it because we've got this other business called Magic Millions, which is a private business, and Jerry and I, it was broke, had 3 owners, all broke, but we knew it well. We loved that brand, Magic Millions. So I think 96, 97, we took this brand over. We decided we didn't want to do it on our own, so we asked 2 mates, Singo and Rob Ferguson, because they're mad horse people, come and do this with us. It's a bit of fun. So from a 3% market share, then I think we've got 60% market share or something now. But again, it was being able to use your skills and doing what we did with Harvey Norman actually. We got it to a point where we said, if this business in Australia is to grow, we need to bring money from overseas. More than 50% of our dollars come from overseas customers now. They have to have their assets here. And where Magic Millions is different is you've got to race the horse, you've got to keep the horse here. If you think about Melbourne Cup, and not many of you would know this, but the Raiders send their horse, take the money, go back overseas. That money does not stay here. With Magic Millions, you have to have the assets, grow that, have it here. But the equestrian side, so as we grew that event, it used to be sales. Somebody else had the race, so we took back the race, we did that, then we grew the event around polo, etc. But that was because of our daughter, who's a show jumper in Europe. You can't be a show jumper here, you've got to go to Europe. But a lot of those families I found were racing families. I got Zara involved. Zara is the Queen's granddaughter. She's an eventer. So we started Nacho Figueres. I mean, girls, have you seen Nacho? Nacho loves department stores. I had to recently check out his display in Bergdorf's in New York. That was really important. But equestrian is your equal, male or female. And again, that appeals to me. So we've done a lot of work around Magic Millions, making sure it's equestrian, not just racing. And Jerry and I laugh. We do it in our week in January on holidays, and I think we turn over nearly 400 million now in horseflesh in Australia, but we do it on our holidays.
Worthwhile holiday. There's a good question from Twitter. Beyond the internet, what new technology on the horizon do you think is really going to impact on the retail sector?
Do you know, that's hard because we've been technologists since 1991. CompUSA and Harvey Norman were the first in 1990 to do computer superstores in the world. So I've got 3 generations of technologists in our business. People think for some reason we're just this folksy little company that turns over whatever, but we're a technology company, and that keeps us up to date more so than anything. Technology is going so quickly that we sell it on our floor so we can see what's coming. I think, the cost of a lot of this technology is so prohibitive. Once it becomes ubiquitous and then we put it in. So think of us, somebody else pays for it, right? Some big tech company in America pays all the money. By the time it gets to our level, it's ubiquitous and it's cheap. So I can't tell you what new things are going to happen in the future, but I can tell you that when it does happen, we're there.
Other questions from the floor? Just as we do, wave, and there's a question over here. We'll just come to you in a minute. So it's been a pretty wild week on the markets. You wanted to be a surveyor. Can you survey the business landscape for us as we go through whatever it is we might be going through in the next 6 months, 12 months? How are you thinking through all that?
Yeah, you might have noticed Jerry and I have got an opinion on everything. Jerry in particular. I'm pleased he's not here tonight. So the beauty of where we sit, we've been through so many things. When you consider starting at 91, moving through the Asian crisis, the GFC for us was particularly hard, and I think it's pertinent to everyone here today because they're comparing it to GFC. We've been through SARS in Asia. This is nothing new for us. We've got a business in Ireland. We've got retail in Ireland and Northern Ireland. I was in Ireland in 2007, and I phoned Jerry. I said, there is something seriously wrong here, Jerry. I said, I'm looking at houses in Dublin that are more expensive than Knightsbridge in London. There is something seriously wrong, right? January 2008, our sales went down 25% overnight in Ireland and proceeded for the next 4 years to be the hardest time I think I've ever been through. But, you know, monthly, we were going through our strategy. Is our strategy right? Is it structural? We kept saying, you know, we're here, it's going to come out, it's a cycle. We don't know when it's going to come out, but we keep investing in our people. We had 600 people there. I can tell you those tech companies all left that country. It was so bad what happened there, but we said, no, these people are important. And so we bottomed out there maybe 2014, and we've been growing that business. That business is going really well now. But once you've been through a GFC, this country's never been through anything like I've seen over there. There were unemployment rates, 15% up to 30%. Banks, David, wouldn't give any money over there. I mean, they were not good here, but not over there. But it teaches you that what we've always had is a very strong balance sheet. A lot of people dismiss it when times are great, but we've got a very strong balance sheet. And as I look at what's happening today, we've been through drought, remembering 65% of our stores are in country areas, they're not in city areas. We've been through drought, fire, flood, cyclone, now coronavirus, and this is all within a very short period of time. But why we feel okay about our company is we've got a strong balance sheet, we keep investing in our people. I feel for companies that haven't got that at the moment, they're in trouble because they're going from this to this now to coronavirus. You don't know what's going to happen next week. If you have a look at the stimulus that's going and being put in by different countries around the world, there's a sameness in the theme. It's about small business, making sure that their workers are paid, etc. You've got to do that. I'm of the opinion, and not many people have this opinion, that you have to do what happened in 9 and 10 and you've got to put a stimulus straight into the market into bank accounts.
And do you support that?
I do.
Yeah. And are you going to see supply? Are you already seeing supply questions on the back of what's happened in China in recent months?
So we're in Asia. Our Asian team saw supply and manufacturing returning 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So it's as if what's happening in Asia has sort of moved on and they're getting back, but it's now hitting Europe, UK, America. We're in Slovenia. So overnight, you know, I'm talking overnight to my teams because Slovenia borders northern Italy and the border, everything closed up overnight.
Question over here. And then the next question will come down the front here. Yeah.
Hi, Katie. My name's Lally. I'm a proud UNSW Business School alumni. Thank you very much for your time. My question relates to sustainability. It's great to see the work that Harvey Norman's done with e-waste and recycling of e-waste. Just like you to talk a little bit around the circular economy and where you see that going for retailers, not necessarily just Harvey Norman, but the retail sector in general. So the circular economy, what does that mean to you?
The what economy, sorry?
The circular economy and making sure that we maintain and reuse the Earth's resources wisely.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. So in our business, for sustainability, you've got to think about what we look like, and you've already picked up on the fact that we're very big on recycling in all of our categories. Most retailers now have spent a lot of money with lighting power, etc. We're not a food company. They've got bigger issues than we do on sustainability. But one thing about all of this that I find interesting is, and again, it's not spoken about, and it's to do with retail, fast fashion. Think about the amount of goods that are shipped from anywhere around the world into this country, and it's usually 3, 4, 5 dresses. 3 of them are sent back somewhere overseas. They end up in landfill somewhere. The cost to the environment in this category is so enormous. Everyone's talking about this side, but you know, I can't get in my head how everyone thinks this is okay. And so I would like a bigger discussion around that. I was in America in the last few weeks, and there was an IPO happening in our category of a company that was doing beds in a box. Now, these beds in a box, you can have a 100-day free trial. So I went in to a retailer who decided to sell bed in a box because they had to compete against this company that actually loses a lot of money. But they had to compete. And I said, oh, the bed in the box, I'm moving to Toronto. That looks good. Where's the cheap one? Oh, we don't sell that. You can only sleep on it for 2 nights, and then it collapses. I said, oh, okay. So I'll have a look at the better one. I said, so I can sleep on it for 100 days, and if I don't like it, you will take it back. Yes, we will. I said, so what happens to it? Oh, so first of all, we'll send somebody out to the home and they'll assess if this bed can be refurbished. Oh my God, a refurbished bed, right? I said, right, so then it goes to a warehouse. Then somebody else checks it, sprays it, whatever. Then a second person checks it, sprays it. Most of those beds have been sent to landfill. They don't make that process. But the cost of that process to refurbish that bed, right, this is the big issue in the world. What's going into landfill, for God's sake? We're overproducing. We're doing all of this stuff. We're not requiring companies to make a profit, and we think that's okay.
Last question from the floor, over here.
Camilla Love, proud alumni too, Lally. I actually just wanted to touch on your involvement with the BCA and the bushfire relief piece, and particularly from not only that side, but also your customer side and how you're helping there.
So we're not a member of the BCA, but the BCA asked if we would, or I would, become involved with this advisory board that's headed by Sir Peter Cosgrove. And when you look at the people on that board, they're amazing people. What I wanted to become involved with, and we're involved with a lot of community pieces, whether it's CWA, etc. I wanted to make sure that money that was raised was for the betterment of communities going forward. So you've got money that has to go immediately to people that have lost a lot, but then you've got infrastructure dollars that can actually go to the betterment of these communities going forward, and we can learn. So you're not just rebuilding what you've had there. How can you actually, for example, do a community hall that is green, that is a service for RFS, whoever, but is great for a community 7 days a week, that has facilities that when a township like Mogo burns down, it's there. It can sustain fires, floods. It's what are we doing as a country to make sure that we're upping our green credentials with what we're building, with where we're building. I'm known for green architecture. I'm into this environmental architecture. It's very expensive in this country, but we've got to do things better than we've done it in the past. So by being involved with that advisory board, and Sir Peter Cosgrove has been involved with every natural disaster you can think of, and he is a great guiding hand to say this is what Australia actually needs. So I get involved with things where the people around that table are wanting to have a better future for Australia, not just sustain what we've got now.
Katie, our hour is up. Time for just one last question, and perhaps we'll take it from one that was sent in online. You know, you talked about long-term planning and long-term thinking. What do you hope to achieve in the next 20 years? And what's the ultimate legacy you're hoping to build and leave behind?
So the next 20 years, I think we've covered where we're thinking. So we can be this great Australian company that is making money overseas, repatriating it back here. For example, how can we be great in Southeast Asia, but we're still an Australian company? In all of those countries, right, just think about, it'll take me 30 years to do 650 million. Don't tell me I have to do it in 20. I'll die. But you think about Europe, 75 million, that will take 15 years, say. So for Harvey Norman, the future is we can keep growing. We've already shown that we can be profitable in 8 countries. In each one of those countries, we've got a standalone team. It actually isn't a team sitting in here, sitting in Australia. We've got a team in each one of those countries. We're bringing people through in each one of those countries. It's very localised. That is a great thing that you're doing that in these communities. So we're traders. Who knows what we're going to be selling in 20 years? That's the thing. But we're homemaker traders, and people will always have their homes. We're technologists, so we'll be at the forefront of technology in those homes. I've just got to work harder.
And I suspect there's hardly a home in the country that doesn't have something that's been bought in a store that's run by Katie Page. Will you thank Katie Page so much? And now to reflect on the evening and to propose a formal vote of thanks to Katie, will you welcome Scott Perkins? Scott is the chair of the UNSW Business School Alumni Advisory Board. Scott.
Thanks, Mark. Well, look, it's a great honour to give the vote of thanks this evening, and I must honestly say that this Meet the CEO event, and I've had the pleasure of being to many of them, not as many as David, of course. They just keep getting better and better, in my opinion, and I must say I found tonight particularly informative, and I think Katie's blend of business experience and sport certainly combined 2 of my passions, and no doubt countless members of the audience. So, thank you, Katie. And what a refreshing perspective I think it was to hear about a career journey that started on the office floor in 1983 with one retail complex in the geographical centre of Sydney being Auburn, to CEO some 16 years later, and to continue that legacy as CEO some 20 years after that. I think that that longevity and passion is all too rare in today's society. And look, there are obviously a number of things that stood out for me in the last hour, including some of the great stories about Jerry and Singo, of course. But I think what I enjoyed most from the discussion was some of the principles and belief systems that you talked about, which has underpinned your career success, rather than the discussion on the career success itself. And I just wanted to, as you were talking, I wrote down a few things, and I wanted to reiterate some of those principles that you talked about. Firstly, backing yourself and your strategy, which means surrounding yourself with good people who are believers in that strategy. I think, secondly, thinking long term, and I think there's no more valuable principle, particularly in the current environment that we find ourselves in today. And I think there's no better evidence than long-termism and the story of Harvey Norman itself and how it's come to be such a global success story. Thirdly, I think being resilient when times are tough and not letting it distract you from what you know is right. And I think your story about your Irish business and where that got to in the middle of the GFC to where it is today, I think is testament to that point. And finally, I think having the humility to never be bigger than your business. And I think your comment about, you cannot be in retail without actually being hands-on and being in the minutiae. And I think that was certainly an important takeaway for me. And so I think those principles, backing yourself, long-termism, resilience, humility, are applicable to us all. And no matter what job you're in or what part of society you're contributing in, they're quite relevant concepts. So thank you, Katie. So with that, I'd like to wrap up this evening and thank you again, Katie and Mark, for sharing those valuable insights. And as I think has been mentioned throughout the evening, Katie and Mark's interview was recorded, and the full interview will appear on UNSW's Business School YouTube channel, as well as the website. So please feel free to share with your networks and anyone who you think might be interested. That'd be greatly appreciated. So unfortunately, this brings an end to another fabulous Meet the CEO event. We hope you found the evening valuable and insightful. And of course, we look forward to having you to the new one. So thank you all for attending, and good night.